So let's do some notes. This is chapter 12. The PowerPoint is actually broken up into two different parts because the chapter is quite lengthy. So this PowerPoint deals with sections 1 through 8, I believe, and then part 2 finishes out the chapter. This video, however, will only deal with section 1. So let's just jump right in. I know it says table of contents right here. It wouldn't let me change that, so I didn't, because it wouldn't let me. Questions to consider about the chapter. What is meant by the term chemical bond? Why do atoms bond with each other to form compounds? And how do they bond to form those compounds? A chemical bond. There's no simple and complete way to define this. It's one of those things that looks relatively simple on the surface, but whenever you start to break it down and try to actually define what it is, it gets rather complex. So, we're going to define a chemical bond as forces that hold groups of two or more atoms together and make them act as a functional unit. A bond will form if the energy of the aggregate of the bonded thing is lower than that of the separated form. So if there's a lower energy amount whenever it's acting together as a unit versus whenever it is separated. And bond energy is the amount of energy that is needed to be put into the molecule or the compound to break it into its elements. So how much energy do I need to use to break it down into smaller pieces? That is the bond energy. Ionic bonding is done between a metal and a nonmetal. If you don't have a metal and a nonmetal, you do not have an ionic bond. You got to have one of each. And the way that this works is the metal gives an electron to the nonmetal. Alright? The electron is completely transferred. The metal's like, hey, I don't want this. Do you? And the metal's like, or the nonmetal's like, of course I do. Thank you so much. And they take the electron. Because the metal now has a positive charge, it is attracted to the nonmetal, which now has a negative charge because it has more electrons than it does protons. So that is an ionic bond, always between a metal and a non-metal. A covalent bond happens when two atoms share electrons. See, all atoms are trying to get to that stable electron configuration of a noble gas. And they will do whatever it takes to get to that noble gas configuration. They will beg, borrow, and steal. Metals will give them away because it's easier to give away 1 or 2 electrons than it is to gain 7 or 8, 6 or 7. Okay? And nonmetals will take them or share them because it's easier to share a couple of electrons than it is to lose a whole bunch of electrons to get back to that electron configuration of the noble gas before them. So, covalent bonds are when electrons are shared. Polar covalent bonds happen when the electrons are not shared equally amongst the two atoms that make up that molecule. So one of them has possession of the electron a lot more than the other one. So it draws that electron to it more than the other. And the result is a charge within the molecule. One region is slightly positive and one region is slightly negative. It's not fully negative or fully positive. It's just this area is a little more positive and this area is a little more negative. So what is meant by the term chemical bond? Remember that a chemical bond is very difficult to define, but in general it can be described as forces that hold atoms together and make them act like one functional unit. Why do atoms bond to form other molecules? Well, they will form molecules if the energy of the aggregate, the energy of the molecule, is lower than that of the separated atoms. So if it has a lower amount of energy contained within the molecule, it's going to be that way. If it has less energy as individual atoms, it's going to stay as individual atoms. And how do atoms bond with each other to make molecules? Well, they can either share their electrons in a covalent bond, or they can transfer them in an ionic bond. And that is it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you would like 5 bonus points, send me an email with your favorite song. Favorite song, artist, and song title. And if it is school appropriate, I'll add it to the school playlist. I'll see you guys tomorrow in class.